Hello everyone, this is Jason Merkel with HobbyZone Hobby, and I'm here today to show you how to check out and then to ultimately repair a damaged wing from, in this case, a HobbyZone AeroScout S trainer aircraft. A lot of these same tips and tidbits will apply to most EPO foam airplanes. So there's different types of foam out there that are used for radio-controlled aircraft in particular. EPO foam is a little more durable. It's usually used in some of the larger foam aircraft because of its density and then its durability. Some of the very small airplanes, especially our ultra-micro airplanes, are made out of EPS foam. That foam is a little bit lighter, but also a little more fragile, and it does require special types of glue. So first I'll talk a little bit about the glues that you can use. So you've got here two-part epoxy. This is relatively common. A lot of people are familiar with this. In this case, we got some 5-6 minute epoxy here that you mix in equal parts in a little bowl here, and then you use some popsicle sticks or something to apply it, and then you can use 70% or 90% even isopropyl rubbing alcohol to clean up after you use the glue. We're not going to use that for this particular repair, but I wanted to point out you could if that's all that you had available. That is an option. What we're going to use for this repair here is something that's relatively common in our industry, which is CA glue, and some people are familiar with it as super glue. Now they're formulated a little bit differently within the RC industry sometimes, so it's different, the glues that we offer versus maybe what you might buy in a regular super glue at hardware stores. So we strongly recommend using the glue from our industry if you can find it. In this case, we've got some of the Great Plains glue here in the different types. We've got thin, which is very, very thin. It's almost like water. And then we've got kind of the medium gap filling, which is kind of the most popular. A lot of people use this for a lot of different things, and that's the glue we're going to use today. There's also foam safe, and in this case, this is EPO foam, but the one benefit of this foam is you don't have to use foam safe glue. The foam safe super glue or CA glue is odorless. It doesn't have an odor to it. That is usually what causes the EPS foam on our smaller airplanes to melt when you try to use that glue. So you don't have to use foam safe CA. A lot of people do buy it because it can be used on everything, including the smaller ultra micro airplanes, and so then they just have one bottle of glue for almost all uses. So that's an option. We also have here in the aerosol can accelerator. So although this super glue does dry relatively quickly, this accelerator can actually accelerate that process and make it dry almost instantly. And then we also have some just clear packing tape here, some scissors in case we want to cut a section off. So I like to use, in this case, a combination of the CA glue and also the tape to make our repair on the wing. Now, in this case, for this particular airplane, you can buy a replacement wing, and you could just buy the new wing, install that and go, or in this case, if you want to save a little bit of expense and a little bit of time and get back in the air quickly, you can repair this pretty easily. So first I'm going to slide the wing halves apart, and I'm just going to work on the one wing half that was damaged here. We actually hit a post, a goal post on a football field, and so the damage is not substantial, but the first thing that I want to do is make sure that the wing is still structurally sound. So I'm going to kind of put some pressure on it and make sure that it's not loose or it doesn't feel like there's a break or a crack going all the way down the wing to where it won't be structurally sound enough to fly. In this case, almost a purely cosmetic kind of damage. That said, you don't want to just leave it and fly it like this. You potentially could, but then some of the cracks that are in here and the tears that are in here could get worse, and then it could structurally fail in flight. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of push the foam down and away to kind of expose these cracks a little bit better. Then I'm going to take my CA glue. In this case, I'm going to use the medium or the gap filling, and I'm going to apply some glue to those cracks and tears. Put a little bit on top here, a little bit on the bottom. Now you don't want to put an excessive amount of glue if you can avoid it, to make sure it doesn't look too messy and doesn't get everywhere. And then I'm going to kind of pull the foam back up into shape a little bit. Now it's been compressed enough to where I can't get it back to the original shape, but that's okay. In this case, after we make the repair, the airplane's going to fly fine. It doesn't have to look perfect again. And so once I kind of pull that back into place, the glue is still wet. I can kind of see it is still wet. And I could let it sit for a few minutes and dry that way, but in this case, to kind of speed things along, I'm going to use the aerosol activator here, or accelerator. And I'm going to be very careful and spray this just from a little bit of a distance here, just to kind of get it to make a little bit of contact with the glue. Then I'm going to hold that back into place to make sure that the foam is back in the closest shape I can get to the original position, to make sure that the glue in the joints does its job to make this repair. And the nice thing about using the activator and accelerator is I only have to wait a few seconds. I don't have to wait a few minutes for this to dry fully. So after I am confident that the glue has dried and that I'm back to the shape that I want to be, I am going to use a paper towel here to wipe off some of that accelerator or activator that might be left on the surface. And then for an additional measure, and honestly at this point you could stop, and a lot of people probably would, and they would fly the wing just the way it is now, but for some extra security and extra durability here, I'm going to go ahead and apply some tape across that damaged area to kind of smooth things out airfoil wise, but then to also make sure that those cracks and tears, even if the glue does come loose, that it doesn't get worse. So I'm going to pull enough tape out here to cover that damaged area, plus a little some on either side. So I'm going to kind of eyeball this out, measure it out a little bit, tear it off there, and then I'm going to lay the tape so about half of it is on the top part of the wing and the other half wraps around the bottom half of the wing. And so starting from kind of the top here, I'm going to push it down and kind of curl it around the shape of the airfoil as I go. And then wrap it onto the bottom. Now you could potentially use a couple of pieces of tape here to do this if you needed to have a little bit more coverage. In our case, the tears did not go very deep into the wing, so I don't have to cover it with so much tape. And you do want to try and use less tape if you can, because you don't want to create a lateral imbalance. In this case, we added a little bit of tape and a little bit of glue to the right side, so in theory, it might be a little bit right side heavy, which might require a little bit of left aileron trim to counteract, but it's not enough to matter. Now, some people get worried about the airfoil shape of the wing and making sure that it's absolutely perfectly smooth. And yes, while that makes it better, it's not absolutely necessary. In this case, the tape is really just kind of doing the job to make sure that the repair we made doesn't come loose, and this wing will work just fine. It may not look perfect, but it will basically work like perfect again. So you have that choice. You can either buy a new wing set or you can repair it just like we did here using, again, CA glue. You could use epoxy glue. There are some other glues out there that would work. I would recommend not just using tape. I think the combination of the glue and the tape is the best way to make this repair.